From 12 News, this is Newsmakers.
It's been a roller coaster summer for Democrats. President Biden quit the presidential race after intense pressure from other senior leaders. Now, Vice President Kamala Harris is riding a wave of momentum as she seeks to overtake former President Donald Trump in the polls. Newly elected Congressman Gabe Amo has had a front row seat for it all, even joining Biden in Las Vegas for what turned out to be his last campaign stop. Where do Democrats go from here? We'll ask our guest this week on Newsmakers, Rhode Island Congressman Gabe Amo. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News Politics editor Ted Nesi, and we welcome our guest, Congressman Gabe Amo. Welcome back to the program. It's good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So we have a lot to talk about, Congressman, but we have to start with Trump's comments, former President Donald Trump's comments during a session with the National Association of Black Journalists. It's made a lot of news in recent days, especially his comments on Vice President Kamala Harris's race. Let's take a listen.
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
Congressman, I have to ask you, what was your first reaction when you heard it?
My first reaction was, what year are we living in? This is 2024. We should be able to talk about issues of identity without the weird cynicism and, frankly, dog whistling that you have former President Trump putting forward. It is clear, as she describes herself, the vice president is black and of South Asian heritage, Indian. That is a fact. I think this is another attempt to be backwards looking and, frankly, bizarre. Think about this. Remember the whole birth certificate birtherism with former President Obama. This is a dog whistle to certain folks who want to look at race as a scary thing. We are a diverse country. I am honored to be someone who brings a perspective from my background that is a little bit different than others here in Rhode Island. So I think when you look at President Trump, former President Trump, think about his intentions. His intentions are to fearmonger, to obscure, and really, this is another example of him being weird.
Well, do you think, Congressman, there's a risk for Democrats here where, well, I would say most of the reaction, including from many Republicans, was negative to him saying that, to get Democrats to start talking about identity and start talking about race in a way that maybe swing voters here and feel like, well, why aren't they talking about the economy and stuff? Is that a risk for Democrats with this, even if he got a lot of criticism from what he said?
No, the risk is with former President Trump. He's the one trying to distract us. He doesn't want to talk about Project 2025. You see how we aren't talking about it because we're talking about this? He wants us to not talk about it.
I think that's Ted's point, though, Congressman, right? I mean, this is the former president trying to use your word distract. And is that baiting Democrats?
It shouldn't bait us because we have a clear contrast and a choice to make between the prosecutor and the felon. You've heard that over and over again. It's clear. He does not want to talk about his faults, his errors. He does not want to talk about his focus on doubling down on trickle-down economics instead of making our system fairer and ensuring that everybody can thrive in our economy. And he certainly doesn't want to talk about issues of freedom, freedoms that he wishes to obstruct, just like the actions on January 6th. So let's be very clear here. The only risk the Democrats have here is that we are focused on something slightly different, but we have to return to what Americans are voting on. They're voting on their economic livelihoods. They're voting on their future and their freedoms. That's what we're going to focus on. That's what I'm talking about on the campaign trail, and I know the vice president will be doing the same.
I did want to ask a zoom-out question on this because you just ran for office last year, as you just alluded to. You're the first black person to ever represent Rhode Island in Congress, and when you were campaigning, you had a line which I heard you use frequently, which is, I'm not running to make history, I'm running to make a difference. And it was clear that, well, you didn't shy away from people mentioning that you would make history in terms of your identity. You didn't feel it was something you wanted to be talking about all the time. Just how did you, because it's who you are. How did you think about that mix of like you as a person versus you as a candidate?
Well, I know when people were looking at my television commercials, there was no mystery as to what my race was. Right? And so ultimately, I had to focus on the things that people care about. Will Washington work for them? Will the people that I've known my whole life in Rhode Island, in the 1st Congressional District, have someone who builds on the legacy of so many in our congressional delegations past to bring resources back home? Would they have somebody who could really cut through noise and, in a bipartisan fashion, go and try to get some things done? That's what ultimately people want to hear from me, and I do mean it. I ran to make a difference, not to make history. Of course, I did that along the way. I'm grateful for Rhode Islanders for seeing me for all the parts that I am, someone with great experience in government and someone who has a slightly different story. But what you heard me say often is we all are sharing the same Rhode Island story where someone came before us and worked to make our lives better, and we have that sacred obligation to move forward, and that's what I'm doing.
President Biden, you worked for the Biden administration. You stumped for him even after that disastrous debate performance when there were growing calls in your party for him to drop out of the race. You were not one of them that were calling for that. Look, knowing what you know now, should he have dropped out of the race sooner?
Well, if you're talking about a really tight time frame post that debate, so if, your frame of reference is such that Americans experienced that debate, they saw it, they saw something they didn't like. I didn't like that debate performance. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is clear to me that in the game of life, Father Time always wins, right? And of course, the president is older. However, if you look at what we've seen from the president in recent years, in recent months, in fact, even this week, securing the release of detainees from Russia, I think that's a president who is capable of doing that job, and he's decided he's going to focus on just one job, being the best president he can be through January 20th, 2025, and I'm glad that he's done that. It's a decision he had to make. He is the only one that can make it.
Not everybody feels that way. There are a lot of people worried that, look, if he can't run for president, maybe he shouldn't be in the Oval Office.
Well, I disagree with those people. I've seen the president firsthand in the Oval Office. As you mentioned, I was with the president on his last day as a candidate in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I saw someone who was hungry to make sure that we could get the job done in this election and make sure that Donald Trump didn't see the Oval Office and that we have an America where opportunity is for the many, not for the few. And that's why he made the decision to give the person who we already voted on, in many ways, to be a successor in Vice President Harris, who is experienced and ready to go as our next president.
I have to press you on that, Congressman, because as you said, you were with him in those final days. We didn't know at the time it was the final days of his campaign when you were in Vegas. Tim mentioned it at the top.
I'm not sure he knew either.
I don't. Yeah, well, and that's kind of what just did it feel different? You have been around the president over many years. You've been around at campaign events for a long time. I mean, what was, now especially that you can speak, I would hope a little more frankly now that it's settled, what did it feel like when you were with them in those what turned out to be the final days?
Look, I felt like, we're in the pressure cooker. There were conversations happening amongst Democrats across the country. Members of my caucus, certainly we heard from members of our congressional delegation here. I took phone calls from people who thought that they should air their concerns to me from across the country. And frankly, what I said over and over and over again is let's give the president the space to reflect, right? Because he was the only one who can make that decision. And above that, let's focus on the stakes here, because you can't get distracted by trying to do just one thing at a time. We still have to make sure that Republicans and the dark vision that's bizarre and bullying of the Trump-Vance team doesn't advance. We have to do that. So you got to be able to do more than one thing. And ultimately, the president came to a decision. We have moved past that, and now we're moving towards a very enthusiastic campaign from Vice President Harris. You just saw today that over $200 million raised. We've got 94% of that less than $200. The most common profession, teachers and nurses. People are energized in this country, and I've seen it. I was traveling for the vice president in North Carolina just last week, and I've been around politics a while, as you know. Worked on both Obama campaigns, certainly a more junior role in 08 and junior role in 2012, and this feels like that energy. This feels like something special. So I think the right decision was made, and we're moving forward.
Have you ever seen, to your point, you're an old campaigner, even at a young age, have you ever seen a swing in the vibes, the momentum that we've seen? It was less than 2 weeks ago that she replaced him. Yeah. And it just feels like such a different campaign.
Yeah, I've never seen it before. You have all these Zoom calls with different constituency groups. Black women started it off. Just a couple days ago, some of my friends had white dudes for Harris. I've never seen anything like it. And I think there's a hunger for doing everything we can to ensure that former President Trump doesn't make it back to the White House. But above that, there's a positive vision here about what our country can be, how it reaches its full aspirations, how we really secure our freedoms, reproductive freedom being top of the list. So I think that's what people are seeing, and people want to act.
One quick one before I get back to Tim. Who do you think she should pick for VP?
Oh man, look, I'm partial to governors. You know, I got to work for a governor here in Rhode Island, and when I was at the White House in intergovernmental affairs, worked with governors around the country. I think someone who can be a governing partner from day one, someone who can help on all of those issues that are local in nature. I think that's what it looks like. But we also
give us a name, Congressman.
I like Bashir. Bashir's good. Shapiro's good. Senator Kelly. I know not a governor. I know he's not a governor, but he's also someone who's an American who has done a lot in a lot of different fields that we can be proud of. Walls is great. Don't get me in trouble here. These are all people I want to know.
Well, and you know, we should point out, by the time many people are watching this, maybe she had made her announcement. We're talking on a Friday morning. All right, I want to end this segment. What I think is a positive note, and you referenced it on Thursday, the Biden administration brokered a prisoner swap with Russia, freeing Americans wrongfully held there, including Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich and former Marine Paul Whelan and others. Objectively great news. But are you concerned that this will incentivize Putin and other authoritarian leaders to ramp up hostage taking, to leverage it for their own benefit?
Well, look, I think we have to celebrate the success that both the president and vice president were involved in. I'm reading so many accounts of this, really harrowing stuff. But of course, we can't be satisfied with Putin's frankly, dictatorial leadership there, and wanting to push forward his autocratic dreams in Ukraine, and empowering these folks is always a risk. But deal making is part of the job. You got to take the bad with the good. And I am grateful that we have Evan Gershkovich back. I'm grateful that we have Paul Whelan back, the other journalist who was captured. I know I used that hashtag and tried to promote the cause, because it is about something that's so vital to us, journalism, and ensuring that people can communicate freely about the wrongs and the rights in this world. And that's what he symbolized in lots of ways. And beyond that, what I do think we need to continue to be mindful of is the alliances that brought us here. And this is something that former President Trump doesn't really believe in. So remember, Germany and Slovenia, both key parts of making this deal. And so a united world with strong global alliances will overcome Putin and his negative and dark vision for the world. And I'm grateful that we have our Americans back home.
All right, we're going to take a break. Our guest this week is obviously Congressman Gabe Amo. When we come back, how should schools tackle AI? The Congressman has an idea. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. This is Ted Nesi. Our guest this week is Congressman Gabe Amo. Congressman, I want to continue to talk about the presidential race. You brought up in the first half there are things that Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about. One could argue there are things that Kamala Harris doesn't want to talk about. Immigration, inflation are two of them. And look, I want to start with the economy. Just this morning, a jobs report came out that wasn't good. Unemployment ticked up. Inflation is still a major issue. Housing prices continue to skyrocket despite high mortgage rates. The Biden administration has been trying to convince Americans the economy is good. Is the economy as good as the Biden administration claims it is?
It's been mixed. Well, I think we can be very clear that some people are doing very well in our economy. So, if you look at, especially because of the concentration of wealth from the Trump tax cuts, you have real inequities. But at the same time, remember where we were at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. Remember where we were when President Biden and Vice President Harris took office. We're on the brink of a full-on economic collapse. And because of their work, we've pulled out, but not everybody's benefited. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And I would say this slowdown that we saw in today's job report may inspire some action by the Fed.
Should they lower the rate?
I try not to get into the politics of it, but it seems prudent to do so. And I know it becomes complicated because it's a couple months before an election. So I don't want them to be mired in the politics, but it seems like it will ease a burden on the economy. And we know that it's just been really expensive to do things. We're feeling it here in Rhode Island. I talk to people every day. Costs are issue 1, 2, or 3 for many Rhode Islanders when I see them in the grocery store. And I know that we need to do more. And so I think the Vice President will have a very candid conversation about what we need to do. We certainly need to go after price gouging. We certainly need to have a fairer tax code. And we also need to make sure that some of the costs that we're incurring on housing, right, on energy prices, are things that we are responsive to with the swiftness that they deserve.
Almost as soon as you were sworn in, there was a crisis in your district with the closure of the westbound Washington Bridge. Many months later, as everyone knows, there were no bids on the initial plan from the administration to fix the bridge. I have a federal question for you on that, which is the state has this pending application in to the U.S. DOT for up to $221 million in federal money for the bridge project. It's really a linchpin of trying to get extra federal money in there. Is the failure of the initial bidding process, is it a setback? Does it not matter? What have you actually heard? I assume you've discussed this with people in Washington. What have you heard since this news came out?
Yeah, so the delegation and I have been very focused on this. You know, this is the heart of my congressional district. So this is something that I care a lot about. And I don't believe that the failure to receive bids is going to be a setback. We should hear about the mega grant in October. And
that's the official name for this grant.
Yes, and it's one of these big funding programs out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. My sense is we've communicated that, you know, some of the reason that there weren't any bids was the aggressive timeline put forward. And we've communicated that to folks in Washington so that they know that's not a function of us not having our stuff together here. It's that we actually want to reply urgently to this crisis. We've got our Trauma One facility in Rhode Island Hospital on one side of the bridge. We have our tourism economy benefiting. We just have the quality of life, getting to school, work, people on both sides of the bay. So that urgency, now that we have the RFI, back, and I think the deadline is actually today. August 2nd, we should be able to work continuously with the governor, with DOT, to make some progress. But we are vigorously pursuing the mega grant program, and we're asking the DOT to get creative. Is there anything else we can do?
You know, just over the border, your colleague, Congressman Jake Auchincloss, wasn't as diplomatic when he reacted to the bridge, the no bids for the RFP for the bridge, and he expressed disappointment in the McKee administration and how they modeled that RFP that resulted again in no bids. Are you disappointed?
Yeah, look, I'm disappointed every day that this project isn't moving forward. So, and I've spoken with Jake, his colleague, obviously borders my congressional district, and I've said, look, we have to have all hands on deck.
Constituents are also affected by the Washington Bridge.
Majorly, and even further down. So it is important that we get this done. And so the delegation is wrapping their hands around trying to get the resources we need, and anything that the state needs, they are in touch with us, and they should continue to be in touch with us. But we're going to do our job number one, which is get that money to support this project.
Back to Washington issues. You decided to attend the speech by Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. Quite a number of Democrats, not all, but quite a number of Democrats boycotted that, and it was a big debate about whether they should go. Why did you decide to go to the speech?
Yeah, I think it's a decision that you have to be able to explain to your constituents. And if you do that, then you should have a clear conscience about it. For me, I know that people in the 1st District want me to listen to views that I agree with and views that I disagree with. I don't believe that Benjamin Netanyahu has been an effective leader, especially amidst this conflict. And I had to hear it directly. I thought it was important to sit in the chamber. I sit in that chamber with a lot of people I disagree with often. And I thought it was very important for me to listen and respond accordingly. And I think what was missing in a very big way was any commitment to a deal, to a ceasefire deal that's on the table, so we can have a path forward, so we can get hostages back home. Remember, hostages have only returned when there's been a deal. Moreover, we have to end the suffering that so many people, so many Palestinians, by no choice of their own, are experiencing. And we're reading reports about polio spreading in Gaza. And I did not hear that sympathy for that condition. We've got to get everybody to the table here, and I'm going to spend as much of my time trying to think about the day after and how we can end cycles of violence.
We should mention both in terms of Netanyahu and the Amo Gershkovich situation. You're on the Foreign Affairs Committee. It's one of the issues that you've been assigned down there. Last time we had you on the show, you're very new to Congress. You've had some months under your belt now. What surprised you? What's interesting? What did you not expect about this, being a member of Congress?
Yeah, it's just short of 9 months since I've been in Congress, and I couldn't have picked a more eventful time to be in Congress. You know, everything from expelling colleagues to voting to keep the government open once, twice, 3 times, to major aid packages that we've had to focus on for our national security. So look, I think the thing that I'm most surprised by is the fact that you've got some people there who really want the institution to fail. On the other side of the aisle. It is unfortunate to me because I want this to work. And I do believe there are more people who want it to work than not. But when you have whether it's appropriations bills filled with poison pills around all these polarizing, controversial things that aren't about actually solving any problems, you know, it's one thing to see it on TV, it's another thing to see it on the House floor. I would say beyond that, a thing that surprises me in a positive way is that there are some of the greatest public servants in our country there. And when you spend some time on both sides of the aisle, you learn things about yourself. And I remain positive, I remain optimistic, and I want to continue to work for Rhode Islanders.
In one of those bipartisan bills you put forward on AI, unfortunately we're out of time. It's something I wanted to talk about in this segment, but we didn't. So I'll put a link to a story in the Newsmakers page to his proposal to put AI in the K-12 curriculum. Congressman Gabe Amo, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. On Wednesday, the nephew of the Providence police chief pleaded guilty to running a multi-state fentanyl ring. Joshua Perez has been in custody since his arrest by federal agents in 2022. He's the nephew of Providence Police Colonel Oscar Perez and Sergeant Andre Perez, who was a detective that handled drug cases. As Target 12 reported last year, the FBI was investigating the police department and Josh Perez's family ties. Now, the status of that investigation is unclear. I reached out to an FBI spokesperson last week, and she declined to comment. But Josh Perez's attorney, Jack Cicilline, told me outside federal court in Boston on Wednesday that his client's uncles have nothing to do with this case.
There was no indication that he was ever near either one of them or that any one of them were in a position to assist him in any way. He got no information from them, and they did not in any way encourage his activity. And as a matter of fact, they went out of their way to make it known to the family that they were upset with what they were hearing about what he was doing.
That's Jack Cicilline. Josh Perez is scheduled to be sentenced on November 12th. He faces a minimum of 10 years in prison and a maximum of life behind bars. Our full report on this investigation is on the Target 12 page of WPRI.com. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, and you can take us with you on the go and on your phone. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.